Thank you. There was some big words and
bigly words.
Bigly words. I wasn't fluent, though I do live in Copenhagen now. I used to live in New York, which is obviously something different. I'm really glad and really excited, and also a tiny bit not nervous about being here, but actually about what I'm going to talk about in terms of technology and design in terms of the running field. I'm here to talk about design within digital running, and as I can imagine, like a lot of you who work a lot with running as well, is sort of excited and nervous about technology at the same time. Actually, I have the same feeling, like sometimes I get really excited about technology and sometimes it starts to scare me, like what are we actually going to do with this, and what is essentially too much. I'm Mathias. I come from a design studio called Norgram. It's essentially just a two-man studio that I run with my partner Sebastian. A little bit of background about me before. I've worked the last 11 years within design and with a focus on digital products and digital identity. And been lucky to work in the US as well with places like Google and NASA, but also a lot of smaller startups, which I think actually is some of the most exciting stuff. As I said, I run a studio with Sebastian, who's over here as well, and a lot of what we do is sort of ends in a visual product, you can say, but essentially the visual product is the sum of all the experiences and paths and decisions that are made before this. So I was talking to us before, like, who is a runner? Am I a runner actually? And he was saying, like, essentially nowadays, if you have a pair of running shoes, you're a runner. And I guess from that too, right, I am a runner, although I'm not like a hardcore runner. Looking at, or going a little bit back in time before looking into the future of design and technology within the running world, these three devices are three devices that has sort of made a mark within my career, at least something that I've thought about. Right around when I started designing, this was when Nike and Apple actually made the collaboration around putting the chip in the shoe. I think it was one of the very first consumables that were able to track your runs, and it was, I remember at the time I was not thinking, and I was playing a lot of football at the time, that was sort of my passion, but I was thinking, this is not I'm not a runner and I don't need to have this to run, but I think the technology side of it is super interesting, and what does that do to our experience with running and sports in general. Then obviously came the iPhone, which for the last 8 years has affected my work a lot. A lot of it happens on smartphones and within apps, and then obviously the fuel ban is a little bit of time ago, and it also stopped. But the sense of using wearables as well is something that from my industry it's affecting a lot, and just in the 11 years I've been designing, it has been moving so fast that it's actually pretty hard to cope with the pace. Even though I said I wasn't really a runner, last summer I helped a small startup make a digital identity, and they work with running, so I actually had the urge to figure out what does it actually feel like to run and do it a little bit more often. Obviously I had been running a little bit before, but actually training up to something. So I did the Copenhagen half marathon last year, and during that period of designing that identity and working with those guys who were engineers, I got to understand also as well what is the feeling of actually running and training and the motivations, and when do I want to sit in my couch and when do I actually want to get out and run. I think I started with saying that I'm excited and I'm also a little bit nervous and a little bit scared. I think currently there's a gold rush for emerging technology. Everybody is trying to disrupt, everybody is saying they have a new technology, la 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 la, and I think it was Christian before who said that how many people have a Fitbit. And I think when Fitbit came out, you know, there was a lot of talks about it, this is the future and so on, and now no one has it. So it's also a sense that, you know, yesterday you said tomorrow, if you look at technology, everybody is trying to solve tomorrow, but very few actually focus on today. Here's a little video. A homeless guy, but he goes running to sort of escape his everyday. This was actually a little bit the feeling that I got as well when I was running, but most importantly I think running is an individual experience, and so far with technology it has been a lot about tracking, and now we're moving more towards personalization. If you look at design, I think a lot of people think of design as something visual, something we put colors to, something we put a typeface to. But really, I think design is a tool, and the reason why I have the Bauhaus school from Germany here is that Bauhaus was actually funded by the economic institution in Germany as a strategy to actually learn people how to make a better experience. And I think all in all, design is a tool, but it's also the tool for making meaningful experiences and obviously having relevance. It's a little bit hard to see here actually, but there are two circles. One on the other side is technology. These are all the things that are happening really fast. It's machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on. You have running on the other side, which is the passion as well. But I think where that experience lies and how that becomes a success is very much dependent on how we use design. And when I'm saying design, I'm actually not only thinking from a visual perspective. Because obviously there is the visual perspective, which is sort of classic design. When you think about a shoe designer or an architect who makes a piece of furniture and they craft it and it's beautiful and then it's done and then you can buy it off the shelf. That's one thing, and obviously this needs to play into the role of running and the experience within apps and so on. But then there's also a new side to it. This is design thinking, and obviously this has happened throughout quite a few years now. We're starting to see venture firms. I think even McKinsey is starting to hire designers on sort of a partner level. The same with Google Ventures, who actually have a whole design division who helps startups accelerate as well. But design thinking essentially is the ability to think about problems and solutions and doing it from a more creative standpoint. So I think we've all probably tried being in a meeting room discussing a topic, but we can't really figure out what it's all about. And it's essentially just starting to sketch some of it really, really lo-fi will start to align people. And then there's the last one, which is computational design, which essentially means designing for billions in real time. So yeah, essentially this is something that we as humans can't control right on the moment. It's something that's controlled by technology, and I think we're starting to see this, and there's going to be so much more of it, and this is essentially one of those things that can help us get a real-time experience, but also a more individual experience. Looking at the running world and looking back, actually, I think so much of it is still the same thing. We're just tracking and tracking and tracking and logging miles and logging miles. And essentially it's about understanding a lot of data, and maybe you actually don't know what to use it for. If you look at the classical design, which is obviously about the visuals, right? It's in the beginning, this is the compass app of the iPhone. In the beginning, it was realism and skeuomorphic design, so it actually mimicked and tried to look like a compass. Then it has become minimalism, which is far more simple, and you remove some of the clutter and you think about the context where you're in. And then there's something about the data and personalization around Discover Weekly, right? You can argue that the design is still minimalistic, but you're starting to work with music recommended for you based on your data. So this is also going back to computational design. But although I said a lot of, although I said it's still about tracking and logging miles, I think what's interesting is computers are starting to speak our language. And that's really interesting from an experience perspective. And I think when you look at running, there's not that many examples of these yet, so some of these examples are taken from other worlds, but I think they are very relevant to how we can see some of the near future applications actually look like. So there's something called conversational interfaces. We all use them, we message each other and so on, but things like bots, basically computers that can get answers to you, are starting to emerge at a high speed. So something like this, I think, if you look at the running world, it's really interesting, because what if you could actually communicate with a bot that was based on technology, and you could get advices based on the data you track and track and track. Yeah, this is just another example of how you actually have a conversational interface within Facebook messages. from KLM, and you get the different information you need there. You can see here even, they write check-in is open, go ahead and get your boarding pass. They even use an emoji, so it's also that barrier between us as humans and technology. Again, computers starting to speak the human language. And then I think Christian also mentioned a little bit AI. Google Home is an example of it. Amazon Echo is another one. But it's really interesting how we can actually just start to use our voices. And the reason why I think this is interesting in terms of the running world is that when we're running, and we've probably all tried this experience of having iPhone 6 on our arm, it's not a great experience. It feels like it's not designed for us. Even like this microphone and the glasses at the same time feels a little bit uncomfortable, right? So I think if you look at design and also classical design that's visual, I think within the running world we're going to see, obviously we're going to see a lot of it, but I think it's also going to go down because we want more frictionless and invisible experiences essentially. So being able to talk to a device is definitely a big thing here. And obviously that means wearable computing, right? Wearable computing is not new at all. This is a guy called Steve Mann. He's a Canadian researcher. He's been doing this for the last 15 years of just making hacks and weird prototypes and wearing them and see what it does to his body and his mind and how he thinks. And obviously, probably all of us know about Google Glasses, right? I think a lot of people said in the beginning, yeah, it's super weird. I don't want to wear it. Would you really wear it? And they only had like a sort of I guess an explorative program where you could sign up and get them. And I think most people think that, okay, Google killed it, it's off now, but really what happened is that they turned it into a development platform. So now developers can actually start developing stuff within their API and their technology. So it's not gone. I think a lot of technology companies are just realizing that they need to build platforms for people to build new products. Much like when the iPhone came, there was an app store and people started to develop products. Talking about frictionless, obviously recently there's a lot of different producers, also sports, but also stuff like B&O, like coming up with wireless headsets, which this one essentially is sound. Essentially the Apple earpods are also sound, but some people also talk about them as Apple's first implants. So it's quite interesting how, again, talking about having the iPhone here, using earpods and things that are not in the way will actually make a better experience. Then, on the other hand, Google, they're running a project called Project Jacquard. They're actually doing a pilot with Levi's where they're testing how to incorporate technology into clothes. And so thinking about obviously running, like, having connected apparel is starting to emerge. There's already a few examples of them. I think from an aesthetical and visual perspective, they're not there. It's not something you want to wear, and we are also seeing runners having sort of a running lifestyle. They walk around in the everyday, also in the running clothes. So I think the fact that Google is starting to work with technology will enable a lot of brands to work with incorporating it. It's also a little hard to see because of the sun, but this is some of the early examples, which is, I think they're pretty techy and not that lifestyle-ish, which is a shame. But I think it's interesting how you can gather data from the clothes when you are actually training. So you can easily think about running, how can, through a voice and through my connected clothes, can it actually tell me what is happening in my muscles right now, what's going wrong, how can I prevent injuries and so on. So in that sense, it will also help us give more than just tracking the miles we're doing, but actually get insights and be smarter about how we run. This is a very recent thing and also a thing that I think will be really big. It's obviously a little bit of an advertisement they did, but it was also pretty relevant around motivation, how you use augmented reality to run against yourself, for instance, or run against your friends. This is obviously expensive and something big, but Facebook recently launched an AR platform, again back to technology companies, making platforms for others to develop stuff. Like augmented reality is starting to work really well with mobile cameras. Obviously we can't run around with our mobiles, right? But again, thinking about the Google Glass or whatever we wear, there's really something interesting around the experience of that. And yeah, again, I have mentioned a little bit already, but artificial intelligence and machine learning. So that idea of having, we already have a voice that says, or counts down to 3 and say you've reached 5 kilometers or whatever, but that coach you have in your ear or whatever it is super interesting in terms of running. And then I think one of the last things that's pretty interesting is it started out with the iPhone and the App Store and people making apps that are tracking stuff, while at the same time brands over here making running apparel and running shoes. And if you think about it, right, the shoes become smarter. The apps are maybe not on the phone on the arm anymore. They're starting to get into the clothes. So where's stuff actually gonna end? Who's gonna basically own sort of the running area? Is it Nike, who's obviously they have a digital department and are very in front? Are they gonna keep on doing that, or is it more like Strava and stuff? Will they actually also start to develop clothing? So I think that's super interesting to look at. But I think eventually, and that's where design comes in, both these 3 pillars, if it's classic design, design thinking, or computational design, everything is about the experience. And sometimes when I get a little bit scared about the pace of technology, not only within running, but also within what I do, I start to think about okay, but what is the experience? What does it actually mean to people? What does it actually mean to the users? And just try and remember that, okay, we might use the very first technology and everybody talks about it, but it's not a necessity that people talk about it in half a year, because it's more about that experience and that feeling that you get. That's it.
Cool. Very nice.